sports fans. I'm Ricardo Middleton, and this is Ryan Guillory. This is your 4th episode of Red Flag. We've got a lot to talk about, so sit tight. We're going to offer up a recap of the weekend, talk about some of the teams that are reeling and looking for answers, like the Saints, the Seahawks. We've got a few more. We want to talk about injuries and how to adjust accordingly on your fantasy teams. And Ryan's going to offer up some advice about trades because I'm not really fluent in that. Ryan?
Well, besides that, we're going to talk about a preview of some of the big games coming up in week 3. Then we're going to introduce a new segment, the start and sit, to kind of go over if you have some roster decisions to make. We'll try to help you out with those.
So, the Steelers erupted for 43 points this weekend. I guess Kaepernick still is a bum, huh?
He had his numbers, but all in a come-from-behind effort to lose 5 less.
When you get down 20, I guess you have to throw the ball, huh?
Also, Adrian Peterson, he had a bounce-back game. It was tough on him last week, but he proved that he does still have some spring in his steps, but is this sustainable in the long run? We will see.
13 touches to 29 touches, or 31 if you count his 2 receptions.
Makes a difference.
That makes a big difference. The Cardinals' defense. I mean, I guess I only want to talk about the Cardinals' defense because they got me a nice 29 points this weekend. 2 picks, one of which being a pick 6. 7 tackles for loss. 1 honey badger. And a kickoff.
The Bears
return for a touchdown.
The Bears are going to be one of the most giving teams to fantasy defenses this year. So if they're playing the Bears, go ahead and start your defense.
I guess that's a fair point.
Next up, going to be the Pats and Bills in a shootout, which shouldn't have been. With it early, Rex talked to his boys at halftime and got a little comeback, but not quite enough.
19 points in the 4th.
Good going forward for the Bills. They have positive signs to take away from this loss.
We had the battle of the Heisman Trophy winners in Johnny Manziel, Marcus Mariota. Guess who won?
Money all day. Seattle Green Bay is a great game. Seattle clearly needs some help in defense. Cam Chancellor's coming back this week to hopefully provide that for them. Green Bay, they do what they do. Aaron Rodgers did enough to get the victory.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham should probably get more than like 2 targets a game. Maybe like 11.
I blame Russ.
Or 12. You blame who?
Russell Wilson.
Okay, that's fair. And how about those Raiders? I've tried to tell you, sports fans. I tried to tell you. The defense, they got 33 points to
they have a
put
good
against.
Pass rush. They have a very good pass rush.
David Carr, Amari
Carr.
Cooper. You're right, Derek Carr. Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. 37 points against a great Baltimore defense. Look out for him. Look out for him. So, Ryan, did we all sip the Chip Kelly Kool-Aid?
No, it's 2 weeks. It's still too early.
You think so?
Yes.
I mean, Sam Bradford looked abysmal.
That's
They couldn't get anything on the ground. The offensive line had gaping, just god-awful holes everywhere. DeMarco Murray, your cash cow, was evidently frustrated on the sideline. Are things imploding in Philly?
I still think that Chip's going to be able to right this ship. I think that, again, it's only been 2 weeks. Chip Kelly's track record, I can't go against that thus far. Sam Bradford, he has to get something together. I don't know if Chip needs to change the offense a little bit to get the ball out a little quicker so he doesn't have to face as much pressure. DeMarco, I don't know if he's not seeing holes or if they're not there, but he needs to earn his money.
I think in the spread offense, like, the running back goes more east to west, and even from last year, DeMarco is north-south runner.
Yeah.
He's seeing hits before he even crosses the line of scrimmage, whereas in Dallas, he wasn't meeting a defender like before 2.3 yards downfield. Right. So, I mean, this is a big adjustment for him, and I think Chip Kelly needs to adjust accordingly. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I'm not too well versed on it, but I haven't seen Chip really make adjustments, I mean, out of need, because, I mean, his offense has generally taken teams by surprise. So let's see what he does given a week to adjust.
So do you think this might be more of a case of the league catching up to what Chip Kelly does as opposed to just not performing, just the players not performing? You think it's more of a system problem?
It's got to be system. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of talent on that team. A lot of talent. I mean, maybe a little less at the quarterback position. And I think it's only because Sam Bradford's a lot less mobile than, say, a Mark Sanchez, who thrived in the system. But I think the league's catching up, and Chip Kelly's got to be one step ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go and continue to take the wait-and-see approach with it. I just think that his decision-making, maybe in this offseason, by taking on more of the personnel control, we'll see if that's correct by some of these players that he's bringing in. The next team that we're going to talk about is the New Orleans Saints. Expectations were kind of high for them to have a bounce-back year. They've been struggling a little bit. 0-2 start. What do you think?
Personnel. The Saints have always been, in my opinion, a sum of their parts, and not really all Drew Brees and his greatness. Although, I mean, he's been manning the ship for a while. When you lose a Jimmy Graham, when you lose Darren Sproles, when you lose a Just Pierre Thomas,
Marcus Colston aging.
Marcus Colston's pretty much over the hill. Brandon Cooks being thrust into an offense that he's never seen before. I mean, only had a few games last season before he got injured. So the Saints are really trying to find themselves right now. They're, dare I say, a young team with an old man at the helm.
Right.
So I mean, they've just really got to take the game plan week to week and try to improve.
I think for all these years, the Saints have relied so heavily on their offense, as you mentioned. Their defense has been notoriously terrible every year, and it's the same this year, same situation with Rob Ryan. Can't quite get it right, can't get those players to perform on that side. And the offense is definitely lessened by the loss of those players. Drew Brees, he's getting up there in age. And I just don't think that offense can pick up the defense anymore, so that's what'll lead you to an 0-2 start. And going forward, I don't see it getting much better for them. I think maybe 6-7 wins for the Saints this year.
Could we see a return of Bounty Gate?
Let's hope.
Chapter 2. Our next team that seems to be hemorrhaging, the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to right the ship. Cam Chancellor is back, folks. He does a lot for that team. He allows Earl Thomas, that other corner that they have playing on the other side, and Richard Sherman, to just play their game. They don't have to worry about the backfield. And that means a lot. Offensively, they do got to pick it up. They've got to figure out a way to incorporate Jimmy Graham into the offense. Young Tyler Lockett, use those young, spry Percy Harvin legs. And I mean, I like what I see from Russell Wilson, especially when he started to run the ball in the third quarter against Green Bay. But an 0-2 start is unacceptable. I mean, adjustments have to be made.
Yeah, I think I agree that they're going to pick it up. I think they're going to be contenders. I think they're going to win the West. But it is troubling, and I think putting so much pressure on one player, Cam Chancellor's return, I think that might be a big ask to right the entire defensive struggles. Offensively, if they don't get Jimmy going, then they're going to be stagnant. Marshawn Lynch, I think all the carries are starting to wear on him, so he's going to slow down a bit. Russell, if you put more on his shoulders, you're going to get the same result. So it won't be enough to carry his struggling defense. Besides that, I still don't think the West is too difficult. Arizona's a good challenger, but they won't put enough pressure to keep Seattle from the championship.
This is true. I see Marshawn struggling a little bit more. But, I mean, I think that's just because defenses are able to key in on him a little bit more, especially with Seattle only throwing the ball so many times in the first half of that Green Bay Seahawks game. I think Marshawn, once he gets his volume of carries, he's going to pick it up. I really don't like the Jackson, maybe as a goal line back, but I mean, he doesn't really take the load off of Marshawn much because I mean, he's not going to be used that way.
Right.
So we'll see.
I think the addition of Russell Wilson running more, I think that will actually help Marshawn Lynch to kind of free it up a little bit, some more play action, get some defenses to look at different.
So you're saying he is going to get 850 yards this year? I mean, I thought you...
I do not believe that, but I think it'll help Marshawn to get his numbers. Can help Jimmy Graham if they do some rollouts and some dump-offs. Next up on the list of struggling teams is going to be the Indianapolis Colts, another 0-2 start. Another team with high hopes, very high hopes, after they reached the AFC Championship game last season. I think people were thinking that they were going to take the next step by adding Andre Johnson, Frank Gore, Andrew Luck would take that next progression. But so far, no good. Coach Pagano sounds like a man who really knows he's on his final year of his contract. He's almost calling out the general manager by speaking about the offensive line struggling for the past 3 years, saying that Andrew Luck needs to be able to adjust by now. I see this thing going south very quickly. If it's a GM versus a coach situation, we've seen that in the past and how it doesn't bode well for the team's success on the field.
I'm of a different mindset. I think that the Indianapolis Colts face two very good defenses in their first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Jets defense, I mean, anchored by Darrelle Revis in the back, is formidable. And we all know how I feel about the Buffalo Bills.
I don't think that's an excuse for Andrew Luck, though, for the expectations on him to be kind of the league's savior and be the next great quarterback, next Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. He should be able to overcome Darrelle Revis and the Bills' defense.
I guess you're right to the point that Pagano is calling out the general manager for the offensive line struggles that have been there ever since Andrew Luck's been there. I guess they take for granted the fact that Andrew Luck is able to evade defenders, take big hits, and get right back up, and I mean, eventually that wears on you. So already we've had a slew of injuries to some major players in the fantasy arena. We've got Dez Bryant, Tony Romo, Alshon Jeffrey, Arian Foster, Andre Ellington, to name a few. And you've got to move pretty quick and adjust in order to get your team back into contention. In the case of an Andre Ellington, you pretty much have to search the waiver wire for the next in line. I mean, somebody's got to get those carries. You've got Duke Johnson, Chris Johnson, Johnson & Johnson, the law firm. In the case of Foster, that's not really safe to go to Houston's backups, because I mean, they've been doing a running back by committee with Chris Polk, Jonathan Grimes, Alfred Blue, and no one's really risen to the forefront of those running back duties. With Dez Bryant, I like the addition of a Terrence Williams because he's a proven commodity in fantasy and on the football field. Some people like the addition of Cole Beasley. Don't do it. He's very much a glorified punt returner. He's not Julian Edelman, guys. I also like Lance Dunbar, but take that with a grain of salt. Ryan, how do you adjust for injury?
I think besides just looking the waiver wires, you can go trades. If, say, you have some people on your bench that you can trade away for maybe a person to fill in for those points that you're losing from an injury, then I'd say go for that route. Trades are always my best friend, so I will discuss that in a moment. But if on the waiver wire happens to be the injured player's backup and it is a pretty easy transition on the football field, then if you can pick them up, go for it. But yeah, trades, waiver, or if you have someone on your bench that maybe you were stashing away hoping they pick it up a little later, and maybe you can throw them in there, see if it's the right time for them.
What about players that are like going to be injured long term that you kind of still want to hold on to, like a Dez Bryant, someone you want to keep pretty much to the end if you can?
All right. I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but someone like a Dez Bryant's caliber, and it's not a season-ending injury. Hopefully, maybe 10 weeks, I think, is what they're putting it at right now. I'd say you hold on to him if you have the room. If you're really struggling, and if you have a lack of running backs, a lack of wide receivers, and you really needed that free space, then maybe you have to try to trade him to someone else in the league who has a little bit more depth and will be able to wait longer for a Des Bryant's return. But if it's, a Tony Romo who's also going to be out for maybe 8 weeks, quarterbacks are a little deeper, a little more forgiving. I think you can probably drop someone like that and find an able replacement on the waivers.
So, fantasy football has given us all an opportunity to live out our dreams and be the GM of our own teams without the parameters of a franchise. Which means we can make trades, we can sign players, we can bench players. Which brings me to trades. I'm not the one to talk about trades. I'm a pretty safe trader when it comes to putting players out there. I'll only mess with players that are on my bench, and it's usually a trade based on potential. I'm putting out bait, seeing if he'll bite, and my fishing rod is normally very empty. Which brings me to Ryan Guillory, a man who's notorious for the trading block.
I've made trades. I've had years where I actually overhauled my whole team in 2 week span. 15 players traded in 2 weeks. Picture that. But my take on trades, trades are for the risk takers, so the safe ones, those bench traders. I don't deal with them. I don't want a Chris Johnson. I don't want a Eddie Royal. I want Julio Jones. I want Aaron Rodgers. I want your best player. I'll give up one of mine. But I think with trades, everybody wants to win the trade, but usually it's only one side that's going to be the winner. So it's about the risk reward, whether you feel like your player, whether you think if you're going to sell high on somebody. So you say a player has 2-3 good weeks in a row, but you really don't believe in them. You look to ship them off and you ask for the highest price you can get for them. And I'd say throw that trade around to every team in the league, see which one's going to bite on that, and then maybe you can get something better in return who you think will last your team longer.
I'm waiting for C.J. Anderson to have those 2 to 3 weeks.
Good luck on that. But yeah, I think the main thing is, again, just risk. You have to be willing to part with your big name players in order to get something in return that's going to help you to, not only win some games, but actually win your league down the road.
Yeah, see, I'm of a different frame of mind. I'm all about security. That's why I draft well. That's why I work the waiver wire. I'm all about small changes here or there. I mean, I just promoted 2 players from my bench to my starting lineup, and I'm sweating. So trades are not my friend. They might be yours, though. So tweet Ryan Guillory.
I got you.
So, entering week 3, here are a few games that you need to take note to. We've got Washington Redskins versus the New York Giants. Is it just me, or am I calling every Giants game a shootout?
Probably so. Even Kirk Cousins led Redskins teams.
I think there's going to be a lot of numbers thrown around in this one. No, but really, start any Giants receiver you have named Odell Beckham, or maybe Larry Donnell. I personally am starting Shane Vereen. I feel like in the absence of Victor Cruz, Shane Vereen has elevated himself to wide receiver 2 status from the running back position. And I think he's one of Eli's favorite targets at this point. You guys all already know that I'm very high on A1 Jordan Reed. He's benefiting from Kirk Cousins and his dump-offs, and the absence of a Deshaun Jackson, and really only one other receiver in Pierre Garçon to take away any targets. I mean, we all know Alfred Morris has the hands of a Barbie doll. So, Ryan, do you have any fantasy implications for Washington?
This game,
Jordan Reed?
This game, I would actually say to bench any Redskins player that you have. I think the Giants are just going to dominate this one. It's in New York or New Jersey.
I mean, you don't think that spells a shootout, though?
I don't think they have.
Or at least a come from behind?
I don't think Redskins have
Garbage
it in
time
them. I mean, they'll get some garbage time stats too. Maybe Matt Jones, but I don't see.
Did
Kirk
you just
Cousins.
learn that name this weekend?
He has dreadlocks. I don't think that Kirk Cousins has it in him to have a shootout. I think he's going to throw it. He's too safe with the ball, so maybe Jordan Reed's going to get those dump offs. If you want Jordan Reed, go for it. He's been your boo all season, but I just think it's going to be a dominating performance by the Giants. So start your Giants, bench your Redskins.
Do you have a score?
42-13.
I think it's going to be a lot closer outing. This is a divisional matchup. These teams know each other. I'm going to go 31-25 Giants.
All right, next up is going to be Chicago against Seattle. This is going to be a rout for the Seahawks. Chicago with Jimmy Clausen leading the way.
Second best Jimmy in the league.
At least the seventh best. So Seahawks are going to go ahead and take this one. Go ahead and start with Russ. Go ahead and start Marshawn. Hopefully start Jimmy Graham. I think he's been a little more vocal this week. Pete Carroll's addressed it. I think maybe they're going to start trying to incorporate Jimmy Graham a little bit more, use his skills to their most. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to say about Chicago. Alshon Jeffrey's supposed to be back. They're going to need someone to catch the ball, so go start him. But it's going to be Seattle, probably about 20 plus points.
I feel the same way. You can go ahead and start Matt Forte if you want to. We all know he is an inadequate quarterback's best friend.
Right.
Other than that, start your Seattle defense. They're going to do something for you this weekend.
Yes.
For the first time this weekend. Especially with that big guy in the back, Cam Chancellor. And the holdout, both sides buckled. The boom is back in the Legion. So guys, Peyton Manning's terrible, but he's 2-0. And that is due to a great Broncos defense. Wow. They're facing Detroit this weekend with a, lackluster offensive performance from Matt Stafford against Adrian Peterson's Vikings. I don't even know how to feel about this game, Ryan. Could you guide me?
I'm on Denver. I think that their wins, while ugly, they are still wins, and they're still Peyton Manning type of wins where he knows that he's not physically the same Peyton Manning, but he's going to do enough to keep his team in the game for 3 quarters. Then in the 4th quarter, he can, just pull back and get a little bit more of the old Peyton Manning. And so far it's worked. So far I think it's going to be the same this week. I think Detroit's kind of a dumpster fire, honestly. Defensively, they're terrible. I think Peyton Manning's going to be able to exploit a lot of their secondary. And I got Denver winning pretty comfortably.
What about Denver's running backs? Do they get back on track this weekend?
Never. I don't trust any Denver running backs. I think I've called C.J. Anderson the Monty Ball 2.0, so take that for what it is.
I, for one, hope C.J. Anderson has a great week. If there's any willing trade suitors,
Is this a plea for C.J. Anderson?
please pay attention and tune in to C.J. Anderson's performance. This will be a precursor of things to come. This weekend starts the season for C.J. Anderson.
That's not true.
And or Ronnie Holman.
Also not true.
I don't have Ronnie Holman.
Alright, so that brings us to the Monday Nighter. We got Kansas City heading to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers. I don't know what more you can say about it. It's going to be the Packers on a Monday night. The lights are bright. I don't think Kansas City is going to be able to put up much of a fight.
Wow. Spencer. Boy. I think you just changed my pick. I liked Kansas City for a second, but when I got the taste of those heights...
that's soliloquy. Those soliloquies will get you.
I think Alex Smith has a good outing against an Aaron Rodgers. I think he distributes the ball to a Jeremy Maclin, to a Travis Kelce. Look out for an O'Shaughnessy, another tight end who Alex Smith is known to throw to. But I agree, Green Bay in Lambeau is going to be victorious in this game. But I don't see it being as much of a discrepancy as most. I think that Kansas City will keep it close. I think the final score will be somewhere around 31-28, Green Bay. But I like Travis Kelce as a start. I mean, Jamal Charles is a no-brainer. Jeremy Maclin is a start. On the Green Bay side of things, Aaron Rodgers, yeah.
Maybe.
Keep close notice to the injury report when it comes to Eddie Lacy. Doesn't look like a high ankle sprain, so we'll see what happens in the next few upcoming days. James Jones. I didn't ever think I'd say this, but he's an every week starter.
All he does is catch touchdowns.
Randall Cobb, I mean, until proven otherwise, he's a starter. He's going to eat up targets. I don't know much about the Montgomerys and the Adams of the world. If you need another receiver, start him, because we know Aaron Rodgers can get it to anybody.
This is true. I got Packers taking this one 31-17. Again, pretty comfortable win, but again, start all the guys.
Don't underestimate the Kansas City defense. To our newest segment of Red Flag, the start or sit portion. We're going to start with running backs. We have a Marshawn Lynch versus a Chicago defense versus a DeMarco Murray, and going up against a New York Jets defense. Who do you start here, Ryan?
On this one, I'd actually still take Marshawn. I mentioned earlier about how he's been struggling these first 2 weeks, not quite the Marshawn numbers. But again, I think Russell Wilson, if he runs a little more, gets to Jimmy Graham a bit more, that'll open things up more for Marshawn Lynch. DeMarco needs a bounce back, but I'm not sure if he's going to get it against the Jets D-line.
DeMarco's going to get a bounce back. He did enough parading and campaigning on the sidelines last weekend to warrant anywhere from 20 to 25 touches, whether that comes on the ground or in the passing game. I don't know. Chip Kelly's going to figure that out. But I like DeMarco this weekend versus the Jets. Even though the Jets is a pretty good defense, DeMarco's got something to prove, that he was worth the 5-year, $40 million that he accrued. So I say start DeMarco and sit Marshawn. Not that you'd ever have that dilemma, seeing that those players don't end up on the same team. So next up, we have Alfred Morris or C.J. Anderson. This is an interesting one. We've got two pretty big backs in need of a good weekend. My heart says C.J. Anderson against a Detroit defense that has lost a couple of pieces in free agency. C.J. Anderson needs this game. He's at the risk of losing his starting job to a Ronnie Hillman, which isn't much of an upgrade, but I think C.J. Anderson really needs this bounce back, and hopefully he pulls through. Start C.J. Anderson.
I'm actually going to agree. I think C.J. Anderson, as opposed to an Alfred Morris, just because, as I said earlier, I think Washington's going to be down big early, and there's going to be no time to run. And as we previously mentioned, Alfred does not have the best of hands, so I don't think he's going to see many touches. So by default, I think C.J. Anderson will do better than an Alfred Morris.
Start Matt Jones.
Maybe.
Okay. How about quarterbacks? Let's look at quarterbacks. So we've got Andrew Luck going up against a Tennessee defense, or Eli Manning going up against a Washington defense. Who do you like in that matchup?
I will stick with my Giants love for this week and go ahead and pick Eli to just kind of throw it all over the place. Luck, he's been struggling clearly with the interceptions and just the turnovers in general. I don't know if that's going to get fixed this week. Eli, again, against Washington, I predict a lot of points. Therefore, Eli's going to have to throw it to somebody. I take Eli in this one.
Luck is going to unleash the fury on a mediocre Tennessee defense. You know better than this, Ryan. Andrew Luck's going to throw for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, run for 45 yards. But Andrew Luck needs this game, and week 3, who better to face than Tennessee? I mean, you don't want to face the Raiders, that's for sure.
This we know, maybe Arizona.
I like Andrew Luck. Okay, so now we've got Peyton Manning versus Drew Brees, the battle of the geezers. Peyton's going to go up against Detroit this weekend, and Drew Brees is going to face a Luke Kuechly-led defense. This is a tough one. Man, I really don't like Peyton, guys, but
Would you say bench both of them? Is that where you're leaning? Would you say
yeah, that means I think
sit?
sit, go to the waiver wire. Peyton, I just don't like Peyton, guys. I'm sorry. He's not going to have more than 220 yards. And Drew Brees I think he's running into another good defense that's going to slow him up, especially ill-equipped at the wide receiver position. So I don't like either in this matchup. What about you, Ron?
If I had to pick between the two, I'd take Peyton, in large part because Brees is banged up to begin with, let alone his lack of receivers and help on the offensive side. But I still believe in Peyton Manning. I think he's going to bounce back every week. I feel like I'm saying it, but I see a 300-yard game for him, 3 touchdowns, and that'll be good enough to start.
Look. Wide receivers. We've got Brandon Cooks versus an Andre Johnson. Both need to have better showings, but will we get it?
Not this week from either. I would sit both. On the Brandon Cook side, I think it's more a product of Drew Brees being injured and really ineffective thus far. On the Andre Johnson side, I just put it up to age and not good enough anymore. Can I say that about a future Hall of Famer? I think so. So this week, neither.
Okay. I think Brandon Cooks has a bounce back. I think it's 0-2 New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton's got to make adjustments. Brandon Cooks has proven he is a talent, so look for him to get targets in the intermediate throws and try to get some yards after the catch. Andre is old. He might be over the hill. I think he might have a game or two where he turns back the hands of time, but not this weekend. Brandon Cooks, start him. Next, wide receiver competition. I hate Torrey Smith. I love Percy Harvin.
There you go. There's your answer.
Torrey Smith versus Percy Harvin. Percy is a jack of all trades. He can go deep. He can go out the slot. He can run the bubble screen. He can go out the backfield, even though I don't like when he's being utilized that way. I think it is a gross exploitation of his skill set. But I love Percy Harvin, and I elect to sit Torrey Smith to start Percy Harvin.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with that. I think you start Percy Harvin, but the only caveat to that is that with the Bills receivers, you never really know which one is going to have the breakout game that week. So last week it was Sammy Watkins, the week before it was Percy, to be determined this week. As far as Torrey Smith goes, his numbers last week were a little inflated based on maybe 1 or 2 drives at the end where the team was down and he just happened to be the fastest guy out there. So he's a boom or bust player every week. With Percy Harvin, he's a little bit of a safer pick.
Which brings us to our final start or sit. It is at the tight end position. We've got a guy named Jimmy Graham. You may know him. You may not know him. I don't know if he's showed up on your fantasy radar, if he's got any stats out there. And then there's this other guy who's an emerging rock star in Jordan Reed. So, who do you start? Who do you sit?
I start Jimmy Graham because this is the week that he gets a turnaround.
This week.
This week is the one. He knows that he needs more touches. Pete Carroll knows that he needs more touches. Russell Wilson knows that he needs more touches. Jimmy Graham will get his catches this week. And we all know this. So it's only a matter of time. And I think week 3, this is the week that Jimmy Graham will get his. Go on, talk about Jordan Reed. Tell me all the great things with Jordan Reed.
Well, we saw
Has
last
cured.
year Jimmy Graham lose a lot of touches. We were really perplexed as to why Drew Brees wasn't throwing to Jimmy Graham, and did that really change anything? No. I mean, Saints ran their game plan. I think that Seattle is best when they are running the football, which, I mean, doesn't bode well for Jimmy. I think Jimmy is used solely as a sort of third down option, somebody that can move the chains. Which brings us to Jordan Reed. He's the number one option on a team that has two options.
And Kirk Cousins as his quarterback.
Hey, I'm not knocking Kirk Cousins. He's starting over Robert Griffin III, and that's a good player. But anyways, Jordan Reed is a must-start this week, and I unfortunately kept him on my bench for the last 2 weeks against my own better judgment. I know Jordan Reed is an every-week starter. I know better, and so do you now. You start Jordan Reed over Jimmy Graham. Do the right thing like Spike Lee. So that's it for this weekend, sports fans. Tread softly when it comes to trades, or overhaul. And do yourself a favor and start Jordan Reed.
Thank you guys for watching. Keep Jordan Reed on the bench for a more week.